I was 5 steps into the hallway when I knew. No Slack pings, no eye contact. Just that unnatural stillness people force when they smell blood and don't want it on them. By the time I reached the glass office, I'd already fired myself. In my head. All Reed had to do was make it official. Corporate execution is a silent ritual. No one talks. They make space and pretend not to notice the dead man walking. My name is Daniel Cross. I'm 41 years old, and until about 15 minutes ago, I was the senior strategic accounts manager at Aldridge Knight, a global logistics firm based out of Chicago. I've worked there for 9 years, long enough to know when a quick chat isn't quick and definitely not a chat. The director, Reed, was already sitting at the glass conference table when I walked in. One folder, no coffee. Just that fake look of strained empathy he probably practiced in the mirror. "Hey Dan, appreciate you coming in on short notice." As if I had a choice. He gestured to the seat across from him. I sat, leaned back, didn't say a word. I've learned that the more you let people talk in moments like this, the more they reveal just how gutless they are. First came the compliments. Performance theater, nothing more. Clients trust you. Crisis management. Strong contributions. I didn't nod, just stared through it, like watching a man rehearse his alibi. That said, there it was. We've been evaluating overall performance metrics across the division, and, frankly, Dan, the numbers aren't where they need to be for someone in your position. I blinked. That's it. No reaction. You're not contributing enough to justify the role at this level anymore. There it was, the line, the insult wrapped in corporate logic, not contributing enough. 2 weeks ago, I salvaged a $12 million contract while Reed was unplugging in Cabo. The crisis? His fault. The fix? Mine. I wore the suit, took the heat, saved the deal. But sure, I'm not contributing enough. I glanced at the folder. My name was on the tab. Bold, typed, prepared. "We need hungrier people, Dan. People who are willing to go the extra mile," he said, pushing the folder across the table like it was a fucking birthday card. I opened it, skimmed. Termination effective immediately. Severance, standard. NDA, expected. The phrasing was polished, sterile. Realignment of departmental vision. Strategic shift. No fault termination. All the words carefully chosen to say nothing while burying the truth. I looked back up at Reed. He couldn't even hold eye contact. I gave him a half smile. The kind you give someone who just made the biggest mistake of their career and doesn't know it yet. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said quietly, standing. I shook his hand. Firm, dry. No emotion. Just protocol. He looked relieved, like he expected a scene and didn't get one. I opened the glass door, paused, glanced out across the floor. This place. I gave it nearly a decade, skipped vacations, covered for weak managers, built client relationships from nothing. Hell, the systems they still use were ones I designed in my first year. And now, because some spreadsheet didn't show enough visible ROI, I was out. I walked past the desks, past the fake plants and open concept bullshit. No one spoke. They all saw. They always see. But no one ever says a word. Back at my workstation, I didn't even pack a box. Just grabbed my laptop bag, slid my personal phone into my pocket, and left everything else. Let them sort it out. I took the elevator alone, rode down 34 floors in silence. Each ding of the passing floor felt like a countdown. Not to the end of something, but to the beginning. Outside, the city kept moving. No one cared. Not about me, not about Reed, not about a title scraped off a door. The sun hit hard. I didn't flinch. He said they needed hungrier people. I haven't even gotten started. The next day would be fun. He didn't fire me for underperforming. He fired me because I outperformed him. It didn't take long to see it for what it was. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Reed wasn't protecting the company. He was protecting himself. I was a liability, but not the kind HR talks about. I was the reminder that he didn't know what the hell he was doing. The insecurity was always there, just under the surface. He dressed it up with performance metrics and buzzwords, but it leaked out in small ways, cutting people off in meetings, rewriting team emails to sound like they came from him, obsessing over org charts and titles. Reed hated not being the smartest guy in the room, and I stopped playing along about 2 years ago. I wasn't flashy, I didn't kiss ass, I just got results. That made me dangerous. Across departments, I was the one people came to when shit hit the fan. Ops knew I wouldn't throw them under the bus. Finance knew I could justify the numbers. Even IT looped me in early when systems rolled out, because I didn't panic when things broke. I didn't need Reed's permission. I already had trust, and that scared him. But the real crack in his armor came from the clients. Big ones. The kind you don't lose without someone losing their job. They bypassed his chain of command entirely and came straight to me. They knew who actually did the work. Reed tried to spin it as delegation, but you could see it ate him alive. Every time my phone rang with a client on the line, he'd glance up from his desk like I was stealing something from him. And then there was the fundraiser. 6 months back, Aldridge Knight hosted a company gala at the Westin. Nothing fancy, just corporate theater for the shareholders. Reed gave a speech. You could tell he was proud of it. He even hired a speech coach. He started thanking the team, rattling off names, and then he said something that made my jaw tighten. When the Sanotech deal was falling apart, he said, I personally stepped in and turned it around. That's what leadership means, being willing to face hard conversations head on. That was a lie, a bold one, and everyone in the room who had worked that account knew it. I was the one on those 3 a.m. calls with Tokyo. I was the one who caught the contractual misalignment in the product specs. I was the one who negotiated the new delivery schedule that kept Sanotech from walking. And Reed, he was in Palm Springs, playing golf with a vendor. After the speech, people kept looking at me, waiting for a reaction. I gave them nothing. I wasn't there to cause a scene. But one of the board members came up to me afterward, shook my hand, and said, Hell of a save on that account. Just wanted to say I noticed. That handshake might have sealed my fate. The morning after I was fired, I got a message on Signal from Chloe, one of the junior analysts on my team. Just 3 words. WTF happened? I almost laughed. She added, You were carrying us. I didn't answer, not yet, but it was good to know who was paying attention. I still had 24 hours of system access, standard policy. It was meant to be enough time to tie up loose ends, forward transition documents, that sort of thing. But I used it for something else. I started pulling everything. Client handoff logs, email threads, internal performance dashboards. My name was all over the wins. Reed's. Only when things were already going well. He was a ghost in the hard moments, absent, detached, never accountable. But in the success summaries, suddenly he was everywhere, stepping in, coordinating, leading, bullshit. Then I found the memo. It was buried in the board's quarterly briefing materials, something most people wouldn't bother opening. But I dug, and there it was. A section labeled Key Accounts and Stakeholder Relations, FY Insights. In it, a line from the CEO's notes. Dan Cross continues to provide high-value client retention. Multiple senior partners have highlighted his communication and problem-solving as critical to renewal negotiations. That wasn't just praise. That was a threat. Because if the board knew who was driving revenue, they also knew who wasn't. Reed had seen this. Maybe someone forwarded it. Maybe someone whispered it in a meeting. Either way, that line put a target on my back. So this wasn't some objective business decision. It wasn't about performance. It was chess. And Reed thought he'd made a smart move by taking me off the board. He miscalculated. I wasn't going to whine about it. I wasn't going to beg for my job or run to HR. But I also wasn't going to disappear. I knew too much. I'd seen how the machine worked from the inside. And now I was out of the cage. I didn't want revenge. Not really. What I wanted was truth, exposure, just enough daylight to make sure the right people saw what was really going on. Reed thought getting rid of me would solve his problem. He thought it would buy him time, protect his image, keep the board focused on him as the fixer, the leader, the guy who gets shit done. Anger's loud, messy. What I had was colder than that. I was calculating. He fired the wrong guy. I wasn't supposed to contact them anymore. So I didn't. They contacted me. It was less than 48 hours after I walked out of Aldridge Knight with nothing but my laptop bag and a clear conscience. I was sitting in my apartment, still in sweatpants, eating leftover Thai, and drafting a list of who I needed to notify about the transition. Friends, vendors, a few former colleagues I actually respected, when my phone lit up. Unknown number, New York area code. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Dan Cross? A woman's voice asked, sharp, clipped. Yes. This is Sheila Mercer, Juno Tech. That got my attention. Juno Tech was one of our top-tier clients, easily a $7 million annual account. And we were deep in the middle of a renegotiation when I was let go. Sheila was their executive procurement officer. She didn't call unless something was on fire. I just heard from Reed's assistant that you're no longer with Aldridge Knight, she said, drawing out the last part like it left a bad taste in her mouth. Is that accurate? It is. Silence. Why? She asked. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline outside my window. I could have gone in, guns blazing. Told her Reed was a fraud, a political snake who tanked his best asset to protect his fragile ego. But that would have been emotional, sloppy, and I wasn't here to burn anything. Not yet. They decided to go in a different direction, I said calmly. It happens. Another pause, then a sharp exhale, borderline disgusted. We were in the middle of a renewal, she snapped. You were the one managing our terms. You built the compliance dashboard. You streamlined our freight tracking. We had a 6-month onboarding mess, and you fixed it in 2 weeks. I didn't say anything. She was just getting started. And now I'm supposed to deal with some junior associate who doesn't know the difference between per diem invoicing and bulk rate thresholds? Dan, this is unacceptable. Still, I kept my tone even. I understand your frustration. Do you? She asked, voice colder now. Because I'm seriously considering pulling the plug on the contract until we know what the hell is going on over there. She wasn't bluffing. Juno Tech had leverage, and they knew it. Reed had just inherited a grenade and didn't even realize the pin had been pulled. I finally spoke, steady and measured. I can't speak to their decisions, Sheila. All I can tell you is that during my time on your account, I did everything I could to keep things running smoothly. And I'm proud of the results. Another silence, this one longer. Then her voice softened. You were the only reason we stayed on after the Q1 delivery failure. I didn't respond. She continued. Would you consider working with us directly? There it was. I'd have to check the terms of my separation, I said, knowing full well I already had. The NDA was airtight when it came to company secrets, but it didn't prevent me from doing my own business, especially since the clients were reaching out to me. I wouldn't ask you to poach anything, she said quickly. This would be clean. We'd terminate with Aldridge Knight. You'd be an external consultant. You'd work directly with my team. No middlemen, no politics. I almost smiled. Let me send over some documents, I said. We can talk specifics once you've reviewed them. What I didn't tell her was that the LLC was already set up. Crosspoint Strategies. Quiet, clean, registered 6 months earlier. I didn't build it as a backup. I built it as an inevitability. I just hadn't planned on needing it this soon. I emailed her the consulting package that night. Rates, scope, deliverables. The same structure I'd quietly drafted months ago during late nights after work when I'd finally admitted to myself that Aldridge Knight was never going to be more than a gilded cage. She signed within 36 hours. After that, things moved fast. Word spread, quietly but efficiently. Juno Tech's procurement circles were tightly networked. Within the week, I got an inquiry from Sanotech, then Midline. Then a startup I'd helped advise years ago asked if I was taking on new clients. I didn't advertise. I didn't make some dramatic LinkedIn announcement. I didn't need to. All I did was stay available, professional, and calm. The irony? For all the years I'd given Aldridge Knight, early mornings, late nights, crisis calls on weekends, I was now doing more high-value business from my home office than I ever could behind their glass walls. No titles, no politics, no middle management with inflated egos blocking progress. Just results. Funny, I'm doing more business fire than I ever could on payroll. When you build a system on fragile egos, don't act surprised when it breaks. I didn't post anything online. No grandstanding, no cryptic quotes, no LinkedIn manifesto about betrayal or growth or finding myself. That's not my style. I didn't need a spotlight. I already had one. It just wasn't visible to the people who thought titles were the same thing as power. I stayed quiet, but the silence around me got loud fast. Juno Tech's withdrawal set off a chain reaction that even I didn't expect. I'd worked with most of our key clients over the past 5 years, not just in name, real involvement, calls, solutions. Fire drills, late-night negotiations. I was the one who showed up when things fell apart, and they remembered that. So, when I was gone, they noticed. It started with vague emails. We'd like to revisit the structure of our account. We're reevaluating our current service terms. There's been some recent disruption in communication. Reed brushed it off at first, told the teams it was normal churn, but then Midline canceled their Q3 renewal, citing loss of continuity in account management. Sanotech paused their shipment schedule and demanded a renegotiation from scratch. And Junotech, they didn't just walk. They sent an email to our CEO detailing the abrupt removal of critical personnel and the impact it had on their trust in the firm. I wasn't on those emails, of course, but people talk, especially people who don't owe the company anything anymore. Chloe messaged me again. He's spiraling. Reed? I asked, already knowing the answer. 2 people quit this morning. One of them left a resignation note saying the leadership vacuum is toxic and demoralizing. HR's scrambling to clean it up. I didn't celebrate, not out loud. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy reading that message twice. Then came the board. It was about a week after Junotech's exit when I got the email, not from a public company address, but from a private one. A board member I'd met once at the Weston Gala, the same guy who shook my hand after Reed's bullshit speech and said, "I noticed." His message was short. "Dan, would you be willing to have an off-record conversation, purely for context, discretion assured?" I called him that evening, kept it simple. No emotion, just facts. I walked him through the Sanotech debacle, the part Reed left out of his speech. I explained how I'd salvaged the account by staying up 3 nights straight, fixing a logistics error Reed didn't even know existed. I shared the emails where I looped in legal, the call logs showing I handled every negotiation point, the revised contract I rewrote when Reed's version missed 3 compliance clauses. He didn't interrupt, just listened, took notes probably. I didn't editorialize, I didn't speculate. I just showed the work, laid out the timeline, proved what I had done and what he hadn't. At the end of the call, the board member paused and said, "You've been helpful." Then he hung up. That was it. No fireworks, no follow-up, just silence. And then, 2 weeks later, Reed was gone. No press release, no goodbye email, no office farewell. He just disappeared from the company directory. Like he was never there. A missing profile picture and a deactivated Slack handle. Someone texted me a screenshot of his LinkedIn profile. It had quietly updated to consultant. I didn't respond. I was already too deep into Crosspoint by then, signing new clients, onboarding talent, fielding requests from companies I used to chase who were now asking if I had room for them. I barely had time to register that the man who tried to erase me had become a ghost himself. But I did smile, not because I got revenge. That wasn't the goal. What happened to Reed wasn't my doing. I didn't smear him. I didn't make calls behind his back. I just stopped holding up the structure he pretended to control. He lost because he built his career on paper victories and secondhand credit. I walked away without raising my voice. I didn't need to. His whole setup was duct tape and ego. I didn't tear it down. I just stopped holding the corners. I didn't want my job back. I wanted freedom and leverage. That's exactly what I got. 3 months after I was fired, Crosspoint had 3 major clients on retainer: Junotech, Sanotech, and Midline, all former Aldridge Knight accounts. I didn't chase them. I didn't undercut anyone. I just stayed available, responsive, and, most importantly, competent. The bar wasn't high. Turns out most clients don't care about titles. They care about results. I was clearing more than I ever did at Aldridge Knight, even with my conservative pricing structure. And I wasn't grinding away to protect anyone's ego but my own. No sudden meetings about team synergy, no performance reviews dressed up as power plays, no directors hovering over my shoulder to attach themselves to the win. Just work, clean, director, uninterrupted. And then the calls started, not from clients, from people still inside the machine. It began with a message from Harper, senior analyst, sharp as hell, stuck in a department that treated her like wallpaper. "If you're expanding, I'd love to talk," she wrote. She hadn't said a word when I was fired, but she had sent one emoji. Eyes, I remembered that. Quiet loyalty, my favorite kind. Then Miguel reached out. Logistics guy. We'd solved a dozen fires together. He didn't just carry his weight, he carried other people's and never complained about it. "I've got 6 months left in me here," he wrote. "After that, if you're building something real, I'm in." I brought them both in, slowly, carefully. I wasn't trying to create another Aldridge Knight with a new name. I wanted lean, sharp, and bullshit-free. They understood that immediately. We didn't need motivational posters or Monday stand-ups. We had client meetings, strategic reviews, and actual problems to solve. They weren't just showing up. They were contributing. It felt functional. For the first time in years, I was excited to open my laptop in the morning. One afternoon, I sat back and looked around at my small team. 3 people, 2 freelancers, a pipeline that just kept growing. And I realized I hadn't raised my voice in months. I hadn't had to fight for credit. I hadn't had to sit through someone else explaining my work like they invented it. It was quiet, it was effective, it was mine. And then Aldridge Knight tried to rewrite the narrative. I saw it in a press release someone forwarded to me. Their strategic leadership restructuring was being positioned as a bold, forward-looking move. They were recalibrating talent pipelines, fostering innovation through fresh perspectives, and adapting to evolving client needs. I read the whole thing without blinking. Not one mention of Reed, not one acknowledgement of the contracts that evaporated the minute I walked out. Just jargon layered on spin layered on denial. Classic. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. A few days later, Chloe messaged me again. "The new director's asking if you'd ever consider coming back." She wrote, "No build-up, just that." I stared at the message for a few seconds, then typed back, "Appreciate it, not interested." I didn't ask who the new director was, didn't ask what the offer looked like. I didn't need to know. They'd finally realized the damage, but too late. I had clients I liked, a team I trusted, and autonomy no salary could buy. I didn't have to convince anyone of my value anymore. I was proving it every day with numbers, with renewals, with referrals. The clients who mattered knew where to find me. The ones who didn't, they were someone else's problem now. That week, we signed the lease on a small office suite downtown. Nothing flashy, clean lines, natural light, quiet. It wasn't about space. It was about presence. We were past the startup phase. We were here. I walked in that morning with a coffee in one hand and a copy of our first annual plan in the other. No brass plaque, no dramatic speech. Just work to do and the people I chose to do it with. I stepped through the door. Sunlight hit the floor. My desk was already set up, minimal, efficient, ready. I stood there a second, just long enough to remember where I started. They called me a low contributor. Turns out I was the foundation.